And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about Alexis. Let me find her bio here. Okay. So Alexis did a workshop for us last year. I was a participant and it was wonderful. She's an excellent artist. And the workshop we just finished, with Teresa Kirk, she also spoke very highly about Alexis's work. If that helps, a little, kudos to her. So Alexis believes in the power of design so strongly that she gave up her decades-long devotion to plein air painting to devote herself to studio work, where she could take more time to design her very best paintings. Teaching is one of the most important things she does. She loves to share her passion for art by guiding others to reach their creative goals, and she teaches with enthusiasm, commitment, passion, humor, and kindness. She's taught watercolor for over 2 decades, from California to the Caribbean. She has seamlessly adapted her classes to the Zoom platform and believes that her online workshops are as good as, and in many ways better than in-person classes. Honored as one of the Watercolor Artists magazine's ones to watch, she is a signature member of the American Watercolor Society, National Watercolor Society, Watercolor Honor Society, Transparent Watercolor Society, and others. Her paintings reside in collections throughout the country and overseas, and they can be found in galleries from the Mid-Atlantic to the Virgin Islands. And you can see her work on her website at alexisLavineartist.com. And with that, I'm going to minimize all this, and I'm going to highlight, now I have to find, I will spotlight Alexis and turn it over to her. Let me make sure I have you here. Okay, there we go. Take it away, Alexis.
Okay. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you for that nice introduction. And yeah, let's get started. I am so ready to get started here. So let me just start, as always, by saying thank you. So thank you to your Watercolor Society, and especially Susan and Vicky for inviting me to present this demo today, and also hopefully a workshop the week after next, May 5th through the 7th. And I'm really happy to be here. I just love doing this. So I'm just super happy to be here, and honored to be here, talking to you, painting for you, and again, hopefully instructing a second workshop. So yeah, so I did a workshop for you all last October, and it was called Design for Success. And the one that's coming up week after next is called Bridging Abstraction and Realism. And I'm going to tell you a lot more about that in a few minutes, and I'll kind of be referring to it on and off throughout everything that we're doing this afternoon. So also, thank you to all of you who are here today. I have no idea what it's like where you all live, where I live. And I'm going to show you that in a second. It's just gorgeous, gorgeous spring Sunday afternoon. And so, for you all to take several hours out of your gorgeous spring Sunday afternoon to hang out with me and all of us, it's like, yay, thank you. That's, I'm very happy. So, okay. So anyhow, Vicky's here. She's taking care of things. She's monitoring everything. As she said, it's probably best if you have a question, and I do welcome all of your questions, but it's probably best, because this is a fairly large group. I think we've got over 30 people by now. So the best way to ask a question is to type it into the chat. And I assume you all know how to do it. On my computer, there's a little chat icon at the bottom of my screen. So just click on that, type in your question. Vicky's gonna kind of monitor all the questions, and every so often, if she gets a few stacked up, let's say, she'll stop me and ask the questions. Um, I really won't see the chat messages once I get going. I just get super busy here. So, I'm just gonna kind of turn that over to Vicky to do that. But then at the end of the, let's say 15 minutes before the ending time, um, I'll invite you all to unmute so you can actually talk to me, so you can ask me your questions in real time. Okay. Um, so we're going to be together for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So I would encourage you to kick your shoes off and make yourself as comfortable as possible. I'm going to take a break at some point about midway or when there's a good time in between things to take a break. And so we'll take a 5 or a 10-minute break. If you need to take a break at any other time, please, please just do it anytime. Everything's going to be recorded. It's being recorded right now. So, you don't have to worry about missing anything if you need to step away from your computer. Okay? Yeah, we good? And that recording is really wonderful. Also, you can, review it anytime. I think Vicky said for 60 days, which is really great. So, you can watch things over and over again. Um, and I guess the workshop will probably be in a similar way for the recordings. Okay, everybody good? Okay. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I'm going to be showing you a whole lot of pictures and talking to you about a lot of stuff. And then I'm going to do some painting. Yeah. So the first thing I just want to say hello from North Carolina. That's where I am. Specifically right here at the Blue Star in Greensboro, kind of right in the middle of the state. So this is where I live. And so I want to welcome you into my house. Come on in the door and into my studio. So this is where I am at the moment, talking to you and painting to you soon. So what I'm going to be doing this afternoon is kind of an introduction to my workshop. But this is also kind of a standalone uh, presentation. I'm going to be sharing some important ideas with you, and as I said, some painting. The workshop, now this is pretty cool. The workshop that I'm doing May 5th and 7th, it's an all new workshop. Never done before. A lot of my workshops I repeat over and over again. This is the first time designed specifically for you, Santa Clara Valley Watercolor Society. Boom, all new just for you. It does and will include elements and ideas from some of my other previous workshops, yes. And that's because all workshops are based on related and overlapping concepts, and it's really quite impossible to put a fence around these concepts and not let them flow over from one workshop or class to another. Um, that's the beauty about all these ideas. I mean, they work in so many ways and so many situations. But this workshop is going to be different and distinctive from all of my previous workshops in that it's going to relate realism and abstraction, each to the other, and it's going to show you how they are alike. They really are alike in so many ways. That might surprise you. Maybe it does, but please stick with me for the next couple of hours, and hopefully I can convince you of that and tantalize you just a bit. Okay, so throughout the workshop and this demo today, I'm going to be emphasizing, oh dear. um, sorry, everybody. I have to stop my photo program. I was all geared. Sorry about that. Every now and then, my photo program just has a hiccup. I need to quit it and start it over again. Oops. I apologize. Not supposed to do that.
Don't worry, that's what happens with technology.
Tuh, don't I know it?
We're
Okay, here we
used to
go.
it.
All right, let's try this again. I apologize. Sorry, here we go. So I think we're good to go now. I don't know why it does that. It just, that little spinning thing that you get that spins that little spinning color thing and it never stops. All right, let's go. All right, back to the plan. So throughout the workshop and this demo today, I'm going to be emphasizing intuition and design as essential to the creation of really great paintings, whether they are abstract or realistic. So intuition or design, or should I say design and intuition. All right. Which way do we say this? Which is more important? Um, I think that they are both essential, super important. Um, the way I think about them is that intuition gets everything started, but design pulls it all together for a great finish. Um, so, what do I mean by intuition? When we start a painting, we start with an idea, a concept, a story to tell, a feeling that you want to express, an original idea. That's what I mean by intuition. Let all this guide you as you start and throughout your creative process. And as you work, trust your feelings. This is more intuition now. Your feelings, your reactions, your instincts, your sense that something is right or maybe not right. Okay, so you need to just kind of think about all that. So that's what I mean by intuition. Okay, now, what's design? Those of you who were with me back in October got a big blast of design. And one of the things that I always say about design is organizing. Design is arranging. When you're making a painting, after that intuition, okay, the design, it's important for you to look at every piece of your painting. Shapes, lines, colors, values, textures, and more, and figure out the best way to place and use them within the composition to create focus, harmony, movement, emphasis, drama, and to express those ideas. Okay, here's something really important. I believe that a painting that's based entirely on intuition without design, intuition only, is likely to end up being kind of jumbled, cluttered, haphazard, ineffective, fractured, maybe confusing. Likewise, a painting that is based entirely on design without the intuition is likely to be flat, boring, unimaginative, soulless, or lifeless. Ah, oh my God. Okay, so We need both working hand in hand, back and forth. In other words, we need that intuition. We need that design. And when we've got them both working, oh boy, we are cooking. Okay. So that, and I'm just going to be going back to this over and over again. Um, okay, now in terms of what I'm actually going to be doing for my demos, I'm going to be working from photographs for my demo today and my demo in the workshop. I use photos a lot in my studio. I feel that photos can be an invaluable tool, um, just like our brushes, our pencils, all that other stuff. It's a tool, the photo. Photos are great for ideas, for a jumping off point. They're great to get you started, but not to copy. So, and just think about it. A camera has no intuition. A camera knows nothing about design, but you do. We do. So, the successful use of a photograph depends on how you apply your intuition and design to it. Okay. In the workshop, I'm going to be sharing lots of ideas about how you can interpret your photos, let them inspire you to come up with those intuitive ideas and never to just copy them. And so today I'm going to show you just a few examples before I actually paint for you. I want to get you thinking about some of the things you can do with your photos. And in the workshop, of course, we're going to be diving in more deeply. So let me go back to the pictures again. All right, here we go. Okay, so let's look at a few source photos and the finished paintings. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how I used them um, and applied my intuition and my understanding of design. All right. So, first of all, many photos, in fact, are cluttered, overpacked with too much stuff, too much information, um, parts that might be ambiguous or confusing or downright, dare I say, ugly. And so you need to allow yourself to eliminate, crop, reduce, make pieces smaller, make pieces bigger, make them more or less prominent, and focus on what is truly important to you. Okay, so with this photo, this is a place down in the Virgin Islands. My intuition, okay, I looked at this photo, and the first thing I always do is think about what do I want to express? All right, so my intuition here revolves around a lovely memory of being in this lovely courtyard for a morning. um, I was painting on the spot, and I took some photos, and I have this memory. And what I really want to do is focus on this lovely yellow gate. But look at all the stuff here that's in the way or competing with it, clamoring for our attention. And so, what I needed to do is eliminate a lot of stuff, clean up the photo, and then here's the painting that resulted. So again, starting with my intuitive feeling about what I wanted to do with the painting, and then applying design to it. And in terms of design, what I was doing to make these yellow doors, yellow gate really pop. Around the yellow gate, I put darker, cooler colors. So I'm designing with value and color. I'm doing a lot of other things in terms of designing, but I just want to point out that one thing. Okay. I'm not going to go into everything for now. Here's another one. I love this picture. I was on a second floor balcony looking down over this cafe. And again, my intuition here is, oh, there's a story here. Mom's cutting up the lunch for her little boy. That's the story. And so that's the way I'm starting in terms of my intuitive look at this photo. I want to tell a really nice story. But look at all the stuff in here that's not necessary, all the usual clutter that's on a restaurant table. Plus, I'm really sorry to say this, Grandpa is really not part of the story. So here's a painting. So I just want to show you, I cleaned up the photo. I took out anything that wasn't essential to tell the story. And then I also used my sense of design, my understanding of design. And so I just want to point out a couple of things to you. Notice the color of Mom's sweater, for instance. Um, and here, look what happened. So what I did in terms of design here, aside from eliminating all the clutter, um, I warmed up everything that I could, aside from the little boy's plate, which I made blue. Look, it's not blue, but I'm warming up everything except for the plate, and the plate, that blue, becomes like a giant magnet and draws my viewer's attention right there so that that story is really, really evident. In this photo is also really, really cluttered. It's hard to understand. Um, I saw that it's a kind of a bush or a tree, and I saw it in Florida at a gorgeous botanical garden. It's actually the common name is called poor man's orchid. I don't remember the scientific name. But this poor man's orchid, what I wanted to do, can you see? It's really hard to see, but there is one flower right here that looks really beautiful to me. And what I decided to do to make my painting was to eliminate the other flowers that are behind it and around it, which are making it really, really hard to see this actual flower, which is what I want to focus on. So here's my painting. And you can see that I have a few quieter pink, the same purplish pink of the flower is repeated in a few places, much quieter, but it's there in a few other places in the painting to suggest that, yes, indeed, there are other flowers blooming on this plant. But here's the star of the show right here. And once again, in terms of design, I was using um, concepts such as contrast in value, contrast in temperature to help to really draw my viewer in here. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about in terms of using photos without copying them is don't feel like you have to paint the entire photo just because it's there. Frequently, I only use a portion of a photograph, and you'll see that, in fact, when I start painting in a little while. Sometimes I only use a really, really small portion of a photograph. If you look at if you I'm going to show you where to look actually, like right in here, right about in here. Look, this is all I'm interested in this photo, a little tiny piece at the top. And it's not necessarily the most beautiful place in the photograph. Here's a sunflower that's all perfect and perky, and it's these guys right here are a little older and kind of droopy. So it's not necessarily the most beautiful part of the photograph. Here's another sunflower that's really looking quite nice. Um, I decided, my intuition here was that I really did want to express the idea that, these sunflowers that are a little past their prime are still beautiful. They can be. they've got interesting colors and textures and shapes in them that I want to paint. So that's my intuitive start to the painting. And then, of course, I'm going to have to design it. And here's the painting. And what I did in terms of designing it here, I just want to call to your attention the way I cropped parts of these flowers out of all four sides of the painting, breaking into all four edges of the watercolor paper. It breaks up the negative space, that's the sky, the background. It breaks up the negative space in a really interesting way because of the way I applied my understanding of design to crop shapes out. But also going back to the use of photos, just a small tiny piece, okay? Um, Here's another one that I want to show you. This is taken up in Alaska. Look at this. Half of this photograph is just really boring. It's just this kind of flat looking water. Um, and once again, my interest here is kind of back here, right about here. This is where I see the interesting shapes and the story to be told. So there's my intuitive start to my painting. And let's get rid of all the rest. I don't need to put it in. So here's the painting, um, just to show you that. And also, I just want to mention one other thing. I've got a photograph here that is horizontal, and it became a square painting. I don't always follow, when I actually start designing, I don't always follow the orientation of a photograph when I design the orientation of my rectangle of paper, or in this case, a square. Here's another way of cropping a photo that I think is particularly interesting. I call this take a slice. So with this photo, um, the intuitive start is to show this gorgeous head of cabbage, which I think actually looks like a magnificent big shadow. However, I don't need all the leaves all the way out to the periphery of the plant. I don't need all this stuff on the ground. I certainly don't need this little green thing, this little green plant here, or this little tiny pop of orange that would just create a conflict, unnecessary conflict. So I'm going to take a slice. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically slicing through a horizontal slice through the most interesting part of the photo. And I think it makes a much better designed painting. Now here's that same cabbage again. Let's take a vertical slice this time. You can go either way. And I end up with a more interesting painting because of the way I'm designing. Okay, everybody good? All right, let's keep going. Now, the next thing about the way I frequently work with photos is I'll combine two or more photos, taking the best bits from each, and I put them together into one image. Um, so here are two photos taken on the same day at about the same time, same place. Um, and here's the painting. Once again, horizontal photos, vertical painting, but these different pieces of the painting were taken, from one or the other of the photographs and then put together to make one cohesive image. And again, going back to intuition, it's all about the gorgeous colors of poppies. And I just love painting poppies. And the way the light comes through the petals and they just glow. So that was intuitively what I wanted to create. Again, taking the best from two different photos. Now, if your photos are not taken at the same time, it can get a little trickier. So I just love this photo. I was staying last year in June I was staying, vacationing on the Delaware shore, and we had a little beach house literally right on the beach. Um, and there was one morning when I woke up very early, I opened my eyes and I saw this. Oh my God, incredible. Look at this sunrise. So I rushed outside to look at it and took a few photos. And then I just really, really wanted to paint it. Um, Here's another photo from about the same vantage point taken during the day. So when I made my painting, here's my painting. When I made my painting, what I wanted to do was lighten up the foreground, show the whole, this is the backyard of this beach house, filled with beautiful, blooming native plants. I wanted to show more of the shapes and the textures in the plants, and the pathway. The daytime photo helped me to do that. And so I put them together into one painting. And this is where it can get a little bit dicey because clearly, daytime, nighttime, I had to kind of meld it all together. But this is a great way also to use source photos, to make, um, a really powerful painting. And then the last section, no, not quite the last section that I wanted to talk to you about is, I call it the sky's the limit, the sky's the limit philosophy. Okay, so this is where I start with a photo. Then I figure out, what do I want to say or express? There's back to that intuitive thing. What do I want to say? What do I want to express? And at that point, then I can start to think about changing anything that I need to to achieve that goal. And you know what? This is super fun when I start doing this. So here's this sleeping dog. I saw this dog just squished into this chair and thought it was just the greatest thing ever. But I wanted to lighten up the dog so you can see the dog's anatomy a little bit better. In lightening it up, I could have just lightened up all that black and turned it into gray, but I decided to warm up the dog. So here's the snoozing dog. Once I warmed up the dog, then I decided I wanted to cool down the background for some contrast. Here's the background, not terribly attractive. So I put the dog on the beach. Another fun thing that I frequently do with photographs is I'll start with a summertime photo and I'll make a painting in the autumn. So I have to imagine, this is where the sky's the limit. We really use our imagination when we do this. Sky's the limit. Let's go from summer to autumn, or summer to winter, daytime to nighttime. So I just really, really love doing this. And this is such a great way to take a photograph, a source photo, and not copy it. All right, so where are we now? Oh, yes. Oh, let's start to think abstractly now. All right. And this is the last big chunk of my usage of photos that I wanted to talk to you about. So when I want to paint abstractly, I frequently like to start with a photo and let it get me started, let it guide me. And I think this is a really great use of photos. It can be, really surprising, and it really does rely on intuition and design. So I'm going to show you several examples right now of realistic and abstract paintings inspired by the same source photo. Okay, we got a chair in the snow. Here's a realistic painting. It's okay. It's not the great. It's not my favorite painting ever. It's an okay painting. Um, Here's the abstract, which I actually think is way more interesting, way more exciting than the realistic painting. So I just want to point out to you if you can, let me see if I can, yeah, I can. Sorry. Here we go. Oops, nope. I have to do something on my screen here. Here we go. I'm going to turn the photo over for you. All right, now I want you to look at this photo. Look at these stairs. They're now in the lower right. And then look at some of these little pops of light through the holes in the chair. Okay, now look, here are the stairs, right here, 3 of the stairs covered with snow. And some of these crazy little light shapes right here come straight from those little holes in the back of the chair. Oh my gosh. An upside down source photo took me from here to here. Whoa, way better. Here's another photo from down in the Virgin Islands, and just this old sort of crumbly arched gateway. And so here's the realistic painting. By the way, this is painted on watercolor canvas, a different surface. But here's the realistic painting. Do notice, well, obviously it is realistic. It's also pretty cool in color temperature. And here's the abstract. Oh my gosh, I heated it up big time when I made the abstract. I was basically looking at this part of the old wall, which kind of looks like an abstract painting to begin with. I was getting lots of ideas for shapes and lines, contrast, lights and darks. And here's the painting. And I think I've got one more. Oh, yes, I saw this hula hoop lady at a local festival some years ago. And so here's my realistic painting. And here's the abstract. So just going back here, here are the hula hoops, these lovely oval shapes. And then she's got all these bangly things and sparkly things here. Do you see that? Now you can see it in the abstract. So you see these curves. All these curves came by looking at those oval shapes in the source photo. Here are the bangles. Do you see them? It came straight from that source photo. And I'm going to show you how I do this in just a few minutes. Okay. Now, of course, in the workshop, I'm going to go into all of this in greater depth, the use of photos and the creation of abstracts. And but okay, so since I just mentioned the workshop, I did that deliberately, of course. I just want to mention a couple of things about the workshop. So once again, back to my studio. So this is where I'm sitting right now at my desk, and my computer here's. Oh, there's that same photo that I showed you, painting that I showed you before, summertime photo to autumn. Oh, there's the little kid eating his lunch, in fact. So anyhow, back to my studio. I just want to show you, and you're going to see this in just a few minutes. I've got a really great camera setup. This weird looking thing right here is a camera, and it shoots straight down on my demo painting and my palette. And so this is what you're going to see. You're going to see this in a few minutes, and of course you'll see it in the workshop. And now this is something else that's really important and I think quite central to the way I like to teach my workshops. I deliberately keep the workshop groups on the smaller side. I know that there are some teachers who do online workshops with like 50 people in it. I don't do that. I think that one of the most important things is for me to have a conversation with every student every day of the workshop, one-on-one, one at a time. If the students want to, nobody's forced to do this. But I invite my students to send me pictures like this one of whatever project you're working on, or perhaps a source photo that you're thinking of using. And then I put it up on our shared Zoom screen. Part of the first part of every day's workshop is devoted to my lesson and the demo. And then the second half is devoted to talking with everybody. So I put it up on the screen like this, and I can give you feedback. I can give you ideas. We can talk about strategies. And I think that this is essential and really important. Sometimes people don't like to text message, and so they send me their pictures by email. So here are several pictures that a student sent me. Here's a source photo, and then a couple of stages of the painting. So this is the way it looks if you prefer to send pictures via email. So just so you know, that is something that I think is extremely important and really, really helpful in all my workshops. And hopefully that'll work for you. Okay. Now, getting closer to my demo. So I'm going to be painting on gessoed watercolor paper, or we can call it gesso coated watercolor paper or gesso primed watercolor paper. I'm going to use that for both of my demos today, and I'm going to use it for my demos in the workshop as well. So let me talk to you about that for just a minute. What's gesso? This might be new to you. Gesso is actually a primer for oil and acrylic paintings. It's made to reduce the absorbency of raw canvas. It's not made for watercolor painters, at least not traditionally. It wasn't made for watercolor painters. It was made for oil and water and acrylic painters. But somewhere along the line, watercolorists discovered that gesso painted on top of watercolor paper or really any other surface, it provides a new physical texture for our watercolors. The surface is less absorbent because that's what it's made to do. Um, and it creates interesting effects and marks, easier lifting, and no need for masking fluid. It's great stuff. All right, so here's my gesso. I painted onto, preferably, my preference is cold press watercolor paper with these two lovely brushes. This is a house painting brush from a place like Home Depot. This is an old watercolor brush held together with a piece of duct tape. I use either of these two brushes. I brush it on my watercolor paper. Here's a picture of me smearing it around on a piece of cold press watercolor paper. And then it creates a great surface for me to paint on. Okay, here's why I think it's a great surface. I think it combines the best of cold press paper and Yupo. Some of you may be familiar with Yupo. It's that really, really slick, smooth, totally non-absorbent plastic paper that can actually, a lot of, I think most people either love it or hate it. I do love Yupo, but I actually think that gessoed paper kind of combines the best of Yupo and cold press paper. Plus, it gives you extra texture because those two coats of gesso that I paint on, and by the way, I brush on two coats of gesso, making random brush strokes in all different directions. I wait about 40 minutes in between for them to dry. And the two coats of gesso, the brush marks, add to the cold press bumps, and you end up with this fascinating, variegated surface to paint on. So that's my little thing about gesso. I do want to say I'm going to stop screen sharing for just a minute because
And
I want you
Alexis,
to kind
did
of.
you use an old painting? Just put the gesso on top of an old painting?
Yes, yes. It's a
Okay, great.
great way to recycle an old painting. You can paint the gesso right over it if you buy the white gesso, not if you buy the clear. Couple of coats covers up the old painting, and you've got a new shot at success. on an old piece of watercolor paper. And if you're in the workshop, anybody who's in the workshop will receive it's about a 10 or a 15-minute extra video recording from me. This is in addition to the daily recordings. Before the workshop starts, I will make sure to send you a video that's all about gesso, and you can see me smearing it around on the paper and how to use it if you're interested. Now, that's a thing. If you're not interested in trying this surface, you don't have to. I just want to make sure you do not have to use gessoed paper in this workshop. Let me say that again. You do not have to use gessoed paper in this workshop. It is not required. You can paint on any surface, whether you're painting realistically or abstractly, or maybe you're going to do both. You can do it on your preferred surface. For most of us, I imagine that's cold press paper. Go right ahead and use that. Although after you see me use gessoed paper today, you might be kind of tempted to try it. Totally up to you. Okay. So what I want to do now, though, is show you a few demos. No, not just no demo. A few paintings before I get to my demos. Sorry. On gessoed paper. So here are a few abstracts. I love, love, love painting my abstracts on gessoed paper. So just to show you a few, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And by the way, the other abstracts that I showed you before, they were all done on gessoed paper as well. Practically all of my abstracts are done on gessoed paper, and I'll talk more about that when I get to my abstract demo for you this afternoon. Gessoed paper is also great for painting landscapes. In fact, when I'm painting realistically on gessoed paper, I usually use it for landscapes. That's my favorite subject, or architecture, sometimes flowers. This is a plein air landscape. It's great to take out for plein air because, as I said before, you don't need masking fluid. And I do not want to be using masking fluid outside on location. It's great for painting animals. It's great for more animals, like for painting whiskers and fuzzy hair on these lions. It's a perfect, perfect surface. And it's really great for painting water, water that appears to be white. So, and this is a plein air painting, obviously, of a fountain. And I just want to say, when I made this painting, the first thing I did was I covered up the entire fountain, the streams from the fountain. It was all covered up with all those green colors that are behind it. And then I lifted off the paint to express the fountain. Here's a big old waterfall in South Dakota, and all these streams of water and the waterfall sections were all lifted off. And you're going to see me do that in a few minutes if I ever stop talking. Another waterfall lifted off, just paint right through that waterfall and then use the gessoed paper to lift it right off. It's a beautiful surface and a beautiful technique. And in this one, this big light reflection in the water was also lifted right out. Look how dark some of this paint is down here at the bottom, especially. Lifts right out like a charm. Yippee, here we go. Time for me to paint. So I want to kind of walk you through the start on this demo. And then I will start painting. Okay. So this is a source photo, and I'm going to use it intuitively and designedly. I'm not sure if that's an actual word. Designedly, realistically, and abstractly. All right. In case you're wondering, this photo was taken at Acadia National Park up in Maine. And so, as always, before I even pick up a pencil, I'm going to think about what I like about this photo, what I don't like, what do I want to express. This is that getting that intuitive process all cranked up before I actually start to draw or paint. And what I want to express is my memory of this gorgeous day at this incredibly spectacular park. The big waves, we were there right at there had been a slight hurricane, like the tail end of a hurricane the day before we were there. And so there were some pretty big old waves the day we were there, just the residual of the hurricane. So I want to express some of the turbulence in the water, the gorgeous sunlight, though, the hurricane washed everything clean. So I've got these lovely memories that I want to express. I also see some beautiful shapes and lines in this photograph, some warm and cool colors that could give me the start of a really intriguing abstract. Okay, so what am I going to do? All right. One thing I don't like, and this again is an intuitive decision, I don't like this big hunk of rocks right here, right? I can't really make a very good circle, can I? This big hunk of rocks down here, I don't like the shape. It looks very rather circular to me, stuck in the corner. I don't like the shape, and it's kind of I'm pretty sure that these rocks are jutting out into the water, and yet, curiously, in the photograph, they almost appear to be standing up straight, and it's so big, it's just kind of taking over the photograph. So that hunk of rocks has got to go. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, now I'm going back to some of that stuff that I was talking about. How do I use my photographs? I don't have to paint those rocks just because they're in the photograph. I'm taking them out. It's better already. Now, if I want to crop it another way, I can get this photo to more of a panoramic feeling, to kind of express the hugeness of the landscape. That's not too bad. I still have those offending rocks out. Maybe I'm going to crop in closer to those two pine trees. I
The
really do
crappy
like
video
them.
'cause I can't make it bigger.
Are we okay? Did I just hear,
Can
Vicky,
I
are we,
make this big picture bigger?
I'm sorry? Are we okay? Is there a problem? No?
No,
Um,
fine.
Okay, so I'm cropping in closer here.
I don't know how to do it. Your
I'm
email?
sorry. Are we okay? I'm hearing people talking. Is there a
Can
problem?
you make sure you're muted, please?
Oh,
Not
okay.
you, Alexis. I mean everyone else.
No, not me. Okay.
No,
Okay.
Alexis, please don't mute.
Okay, let's go back to the picture. Okay, so I cropped in closer because I really do kind of like these two pine trees. But now I think they're too much in the center, so I'm not crazy about that either. I'm going to crop this way. Oh, it's getting better now. I'm liking this better. The pine trees now are in a better location, not stuck in the center of the picture. They're over to the left. And I also really like these rocks that are down here. And I also like the feeling of this kind of angle moving down into the right towards the corner, but not completely into the corner. I think that's really dramatic and helps to express some of the feeling of, like we're kind of on this sharp, it wasn't exactly a cliff, but it's a way down to the water. I'd almost like to make my viewer get maybe even a little anxious. It's like, whoa, it's way down there. I better step carefully. Okay, so this is getting better. But here's where I'm going to take the photo. I like this one, the way this tree, the taller one, is cropped out the top. It's not cropped here. I'm going to crop it one more time. Here we are. So now I'm ready. All right, so do you see the way I've approached this source photo, thinking about what I want to express? That's my intuition. Thinking about what I don't like, that's also my intuition. And then also thinking about design, about how I'm going to eliminate things, crop things, move things around. Do you all see that? Okay. Oh, let's start to draw. So now I start almost all of my realistic paintings with a small value study. And I'll show you my actual value study in a couple of minutes. And I'm just starting here with some simple lines, no details, just to express the basic big shapes that I want in my painting and how I'm going to arrange them. Oh, there's that word again. Design is arranging, how I want to arrange them in my painting. Now I'm drawing a little more carefully and adding a couple of more smaller shapes. Now, now I'm putting in my middle values. I still have white paper for my lighter shapes, but I'm adding several different variations on middle values. And now I'm adding my dark values or darker values. I still have a big white shape. This is going to be all those breaking waves in the water and then the light sky. But you know what? The sky has a value to it. Oftentimes, I think we tend to think of the sky as being really, really light. It is the source of all the light in a landscape, yes, but it does have a value. So you see, I went from here to here. Okay, value study, done. Here's my gessoed paper. I'm starting to draw on the gessoed paper. Notice those two trees are not in yet, but I'm drawing the landforms, background, middle ground, foreground, getting it in. I'm drawing directly on my gessoed paper. I'm just using an ordinary #2 pencil, nothing special, nothing fancy. Now I'm drawing a little more carefully and I'm placing those two trees. Notice this guy, the one on the left, is going to come right out the top of the painting. Now I'm drawing in a few more details, not everything. I've drawn in a few of the lower branches. You can see them here. I've drawn in a few indications of some of the facets on the rocks. The rocks, where I can, I like to think of rocks as being kind of boxy, where they've got corners and different planes in them. And so I've started to draw on some of those suggestions. And here I've done something interesting, which I frequently, not always, but I frequently like to do on gessoed paper. I smear the graphite around a little bit with my fingertip. You'll discover if you try gessoed paper that it's a little bit gritty, almost a little sandpapery on its surface. And when you draw on it, it grabs more of the graphite than regular, nice, sort of smooth, soft watercolor paper will do. And so there's a lot of, in some places, particularly if I draw harder, darker, there's a lot of extra graphite just sort of sitting on the surface of the gesso. And it's really, I love to kind of smear it around. I don't smear it, you see, I haven't smeared it into the sky where I want it to be kind of clear and clean, but I've smeared it around in areas that are meant to become rocks, or maybe this is going to be middle ground foliage. Um, and it gives the painting a nice feeling of, it's already got a little bit of value because of the graphite that's sort of dragged around by my finger. I'm going to, of course, put in value when I start painting. But this is a really nice and a really fun way to start my painting. And then I've done something else, and this is just to get things going for today. So you're going to see this in just a minute. I put on an initial glaze, cool, starting from the sky and then moving down into the water with variegated blues. Some of the blues are a little greenish. Some of the blues up here are a little purple-ish. I wanted this to be absolutely dry before our get-together this afternoon so that I can start manipulating the pigment on the surface of the gesso. So I did this ahead of time. And now I'm ready to take you over there. Let's go. I think we're going to take a break though, but I just want to take you over here. So here's the actual painting and my stuff. So here it is. Can I make this bigger? No, it doesn't want to go bigger. I'll make it bigger when I get over there to start painting. Let's take a break. Vicky, shall we take on my clock? Now this is North Carolina time. I've got 5:34 in North Carolina. Um, that would be what, 2:34 in California?
Correct.
Let's
Yes,
take a 6-minute break. Is that enough for everybody to, like run into your kitchen and get a new cup of coffee or, take care of personal needs or, let the dog out? 6 minutes or so. Vicky, if you want to pause
I
the recording,
will do.
if you can do that.
Okay, everyone, we're back.
All right. I hope you just got yourself refreshed. And it's always good to get away from the Zoom screen, for whatever reason. Um, we can't stare at a Zoom screen for 2.5 hours. Okay, so all right, so here we are. So I'm going to come right over here now. I just want to show you. Here I am. Nothing's pre-recorded here. The only thing that's pre-done was to get my value study ready, and here it is. And I just want to show you, I always like to put it next to my hand so you can see how small it is. And I keep my value study, I'm taking it off screen. You won't be able to see it, but I can. It really helps me. Okay, so I've got that and my painting. I like to put my photos on my iPad. I don't print them out. So here it is. And it's really great that I was able to fit the iPad on the screen. I can't always do that. So you get to see my source photo and the painting. People who are in the workshop, I'm not going to paint this in the workshop, by the way, totally new painting. But if you are in the workshop, I will share with you my actual source photo. So whether I can fit the iPad on or not, you'll have that. I just wanted to talk to you really quickly about some of my supplies because people always want to ask me. And one thing I want to say is when I paint on gessoed paper, I don't use my newest, best, loveliest watercolor brushes because, the way I said the surface of the gesso is a little sandpapery, it's a little rough. I'm concerned that it's going to wear my brushes down. Now, don't panic, please, anybody. If you're making your first gesso painting ever, you're not going to ruin your brushes with one painting or even 2 or 3, but I make a lot of them. And so I've got a whole bunch of older brushes. These are some of my older brushes that I keep in a separate place reserved for painting on gessoed paper. So I got a little bit of everything, different brands, different styles. So it's real hard to say exactly what they are. I'd have to like go through every brush, but that's what I got. Okay, now these brushes are also really useful. These brushes some of these brushes, these are brushes that I use for lifting paint, softening edges on regular watercolor paper. These are called Princeton. They're made by Princeton and they're called Select Chisel Blenders. They're really great. They're a little stiffer and they're great for lifting paint. These are also great for lifting paint. These two guys with the beautiful gold ferrules. These are called Eradicators made by Rosemary Company. These brushes are very helpful no matter what surface I'm painting on. I don't apply paint. These are called fan brushes. I don't apply paint with my fan brushes, but I blend it. And then there's my trusty old nasty toothbrush that you'll see me using when I get to painting abstractly for you today. So just some of my tools. Okay, I'm going to be using these this afternoon. And what else did I want to share with you? Spray bottle is pretty much indispensable. Spray bottle with the kind of a nozzle that you can adjust. I don't use paper towels for blotting. I use nice old cotton cloths. I think they work great for blotting. And then I toss them in the washing machine with a load of blue jeans when they get too crudted up with paint. And in terms of blotting, I also want to mention that underneath my painting is a big old towel, very absorbent. My whole table is covered by a big old absorbent cotton towel. And so when I want to blot my brush, if this thing isn't handy, I can stick my brush anywhere I want and just blot it because of that towel. Okay, we good? All right. Time to paint, everybody. All right, now, before I actually start to apply paint, what I'm gonna do is lift some paint. I'm gonna zoom back out here for a minute. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is lift some paint off the surface to show you how beautifully it works. Okay, the first thing I want to do is right back here where the ocean meets the land, I'm going to lift off just a little line of pigment. Let's come in a little closer. Just a little bit of a line of pigment. I'm taking my eradicator. This is my, it's like a medium size. It says large, but I think of it as medium. Sticking it in my brush and then blotting it on my towel so it's not too sopping wet. And I'm just going to pull it. Watch what happens. I'm just going to pull it right through that paint. Do you see how easily it pulls the paint off? Oh, you know, there was something that I should have mentioned before when I opened up my palette. Let me just get this right off. I just want to get a little line, like a little skinny line. And I want to do this first so it has a chance to dry. Pretty much all the way across. I can also take my towel and just kind of pull it towards the edge of the painting. One thing, here's the thing that I wanted to say to you is the pigments on my palette are, for the most part, non-staining. This does make the lifting of pigment from the gessoed surface easier, quicker, and more successful because my paints do not stain very aggressively. Staining pigments will stain the gesso. Okay, so here's the first example of lifting, super easy. Now I want to put a few clouds in. In the photo, you can see there are some clouds. They're kind of higher up in the sky. There are a few that are a little bit lower down here. And I decided I want to put a little bit of a cloud bank right above the edge of the land. And so once again, I want to lift them out. Now, this is not terribly dark in the sky. It's not meant to be terribly dark in the sky. See, my value study is reminding me. But I just want to lift out a few clouds. Here's how I'm going to lift out the clouds. I'm going to take my towel. And dampen it. And then I'm going to lift the paint with my dampened towel. Now, I could stick my towel in my water bucket, but I don't want it completely saturated. So I'm going to take my water bottle and just give a few little squirts. So the towel now is damp, but not completely saturated. Let's come back in closer. All right. So all I have to do now is just kind of scrub around just a little bit. Can you see the way the paint is coming off? It's coming off very softly here because the towel is damp, not saturated. If the towel was more saturated, I would be picking up more paint. but I don't want to. I want this cloud bank. I don't want it to be super aggressive looking. I just want it to be kind of soft, sitting back there on the edge of the landscape. Okay, so this is another way to lift paint off with my cloth towel, and I dare say this will work better than if I was using paper towels, because the rougher surface of the gesso might actually make the paper towels kind of pill up and disintegrate. So a nice cloth towel like this works great. I'm going to stop here. That's all I need to do. Okay, now I'm going to lift off some of these gorgeous shapes. I'm going to zoom back out. Okay, these gorgeous shapes that are in the water. But this time to do this, I'm going to use, again, my eradicator brush. And again, I'm sticking it in the water. I want it filled with water, but then touching it to the towel again so it's not completely saturated. And let's get some more paint off. So this is where you're really going to start to see how well this surface works. What I'm doing now is I'm looking at my source photo to get an idea of the shape. There are all these wonderful shapes of water that's cascading. It's making, in places it's splashing. In places it looks like it's just moving straight across. In other places it's got a little bit of a curve, like where a wave might be coming out. And so I'm just going to get the ideas from the source photo, and let's get it going. I'm going to remove the paint right through where I've drawn the trees, where the vertical shapes of the trees. And let's get this paint coming all the way over to the land. And I'm also going to take my towel. Let's come in closer so you get a better look. Okay. So after I push some of the paint off with my dampened brush, like let's say right here, and the paper is still wet right here, I can still see that it looks shiny because it's a little bit wet. I'm going to take the towel, which is dry, and kind of pull the wetness, the residual moisture, right across, and it pulls a little more pigment off that way with a nice broken edge on the end. Okay, let's try a different brush. You might not have one of these eradicators. These are nice brushes, by the way. I'm going to try a different brush. So this is one of my older gesso designated painting brushes. It's just a flat brush, 1/2 inch flat. Let's make a big flat. Let's use the whole brush now. This is a little bigger than that eradicator. And I'm going to make a bigger shape right through here. It's nice and wet and shiny. I'm going to wipe the paper. Let's do it again. That didn't take off as much paint as I wanted it to. Okay, no problem. I'll just do it again. All right, here we go. Once again, it's nice and wet and shiny. I'm trying to get some of these marks to come all the way clear across the painting. Okay, there we go. So it's working better. All right, so you might need to do it a couple of times, but eventually you're going to get that paint off. Again, if you're using non-staining pigments, most of what I was using, by the way, when I painted the water, I was using my cerulean blue, which is very non-staining, touching it with a little bit of green. This is my Viridian green over here, which is non-staining. So I'm not having an issue with staining pigments grabbing the surface and refusing to come off when I want them to. Okay, so I just want to show you that use of the gessoed paper for lifting paint with a brush, getting a little skinny line back here, lifting the nice soft clouds off. Okay, good. Now, there will be more lifting, I'm sure, before this painting is done. This painting will not be done this afternoon. There's a lot to do. I'm going to do as much as I can to show you as much as I can about this surface. But I'm not going to do any more. Okay, so you saw that. Okay, now the gessoed surface is just fine for glazing. And so what I want to do now, and I'm going to come in closer, I want to get this distant hill glazed on for starters. Here it is. Oops. Here it is in my iPad. You can see it, this distant hill. I'm actually going to lighten the value up a little bit. And here in my value study, you can see I've lightened it up a little bit. I want to push it back into the distance a little bit more, make it look a little more atmospheric. And so I'm not going to paint it quite as dark in value. And I'm going to start with some of that cerulean blue. In fact, I'll touch it with a bit of my viridian green because it is greenish. It's covered with green trees. So now I've got a lovely blue-green on my palette. I need to dull it down a little bit. I just realized this is the first time now that I'm actually putting paint on for you on camera. Here we go. I'm dulling it down with a little bit of mauve. That's my cool, it's my cool purple. My cooler purple, bluer purple. Okay, so now I'm just painting directly on dry paper. I just realized I got a couple of little spots in the sky. All right. I'm painting directly on dry paper, not pre-wet. So this is dry on wet. You can use all the standard watercolor techniques are fine, they all work on gessoed paper. They might work a little bit differently. The one thing that is the most different, I'm darkening, by the way, while I'm painting, it's looking really shiny and reflective. I'm going to tip up the paper for you so you can see it. I'm adding a little bit of sap green to the mixture. Sap is a little warmer. I'm also thickening up the mixture on my palette a little bit to darken it. And I'm painting right up against that little white sliver that I lifted off first thing. Okay, what I wanted to say about glazing on gessoed paper is that there are times when you'll find that when you glaze, it wants to lift up whatever's underneath it, even if it's dry. In this case, you know, I've got some paint here that's been dry for several days. And you have to use a slightly more delicate touch so you don't lift the paint off. And that's because the paper is not as absorbent. The paint's just sitting on the surface. And so it's easier to disturb it and kind of reawaken that paint underneath and lose the effect of the glaze. I'm darkening this just a little bit right here, this whole section of land, because once again, I'm looking at my value study. You can see how useful this is to me. And I wanted the land to be a little bit darker than the ocean that's beneath it. So let's get it a little bit darker. So I'm just thickening up the mixture on my palette a little tiny bit. And you know, of course, that watercolor dries lighter always. And on gesso treated paper, it's going to do that just the way it always does. So I'm just adding a little extra pigment, hoping that when this dries, I'm going to have a little bit of that value contrast there that I'm wanting. Okay, so that's a good a good start on that section, and I'm going to leave that alone. What I want to do now, I want to show you a bit of wet on wet. When I painted the sky and the water for you a few days ago, I used the wet on wet technique, and I'm going to do that down here in this area just to show you that it works on gessoed paper. I've got a big shape that goes from these middle distant, there's a little spit of land here in the middle distance, and then it curves down. There's a lovely bush and some foreground rocks. I'm going right over that smeared around pencil, graphite pencil, by the way. And the other thing that I like when I smear it with my finger is that when I paint over it, once I've smeared it with my finger, when I paint over it, it really doesn't smear anymore. You know, I've taken whatever is loose on the surface and I've kind of smooshed it around and pushed it into the crevices and the gesso strokes. And so it's kind of stuck where it is now, and it's not going to move around too much more and make anything dirty. Okay, let's get some warm going. Here's some yellow ochre. I really love the warmth in these rocks that are down here. I'm going to start with yellow ochre for now. All right, this is just yellow ochre, and you can see I'm brushing it around and I'm getting lovely soft edges everywhere, just the way you would on cold press paper. Let's make the rocks a little more orange. See in the source photo, not that I'm copying the source photo, but I do love this sort of warm, toasty, orangey feel to them. I'm going to do that using some of my permanent magenta, which is right over here. This is my red or purple. I used my mauve before to mix in with the greens. That's my blue or purple. The mauve is the red or. Okay, so now wet on wet. I'm just going to mix some of it right on the paper. I love mixing on the paper, not mixing everything completely on the palette. See, I haven't mixed that with the yellow ochre. And let's mix it around, but not completely, not perfectly. And again, as I said, the wet on wet technique works beautifully for this. Really works well. This section in here where I'm pointing right here is going to become that other bush. I can get a little of that purple in there, even though it's not a rock. I'm going to put a little bit there and a bit more of the purple back here. This is the spit of land in the middle distance. And I'm just going to get a little bit more of the purple there. I want the warmth that's back here to go a little bit more neutral because it's farther away from us. Does that make sense to you all? It's farther away, so I want it to go a little bit gray, or I'm going to tip the painting up so you don't get all that shininess from, I've got overhead lights that are making that shine. Okay, so speaking of the color on these rocks, the rocks that are down here, I want them to be the warmest. They're the closest to us or to my viewer, the story that I'm telling. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow ochre down here. I'm still not trying to mix it around evenly. I don't have to. I don't want to. I want it to be an irregular mixture. And the wet on wet lets me get that paint on and kind of push it around. And it's going to work really, really nicely for that. Okay. All right, so let's see what I'm going to do. Okay, so I was mentioning that there are trees right here. Oh, no, it's a bush. Sorry, not trees. This thing right here, some kind of a plant or bush or something. It even has some kind of a fruit growing on it, which I'm not interested in painting, by the way, the little fruity things. So let's just start to get some color on this area. Now this green that's here is closer to us than this green that's back here, starting to dry. I want to warm this one up. Let's mix a green. Here's some of my lemon yellow right here on my palette, and I'm going to mix it right in with the mixture that I used for back here, and that's warming it up. And let's just get this started in this area. Now everything is still really, really wet, and so I'm actually going to avoid at the bottom. No, you know what? I don't have to avoid at the bottom, because if it leaks over the edge into the rocks, I can easily clean it up. It's on gessoed paper. No problem. Okay, so there's the start. Now this is too light. I do want it to be darker. Let's see. I've got a bunch of different pigments in here now. At least 3 that I used in the back, and then I added the lemon yellow. You know, when I start getting too many pigments in one mixture, I get a little worried that it's going to start to make mud. So let's clean that off. I want to darken this a little bit, this area, just a little bit for now. Let's start over again. So here's the lemon yellow that I already put in here. Okay, got that. Now, if I want to green it up a little bit and darken it, let's go for some ultramarine blue. That's going to work very nicely. This time I'm mixing on the palette. And I'm going to drag, here's a little bit of that mauve right here from the background. Drag some of that mauve in. Okay, and so now let's just drop this in. It's still really wet. Oh, you know what I wanted to say? Drying time. You might be wondering, how does the gesso on the surface affect the drying time? Great, that would be a great question for somebody to ask me, and I'll just answer it automatically. Guess what? It takes longer. And that's because, you know, on regular watercolor paper, some of the water gets absorbed into the surface of the paper, and it gets sucked down into the core of the paper and disappears. So the entire amount of water that you apply to the surface doesn't stay on the surface. In this case, on gessoed paper, and this happens on Yupo also, by the way, most of the water, let's say 90% of the water, stays on the surface. So you've got more water that needs to evaporate. Consequently, it takes a bit longer to dry. So this is all still pretty wet, pretty damp. I would like it to be a little bit drier, but it's not. So you know what? This is a good excuse for me to start working on an abstract for you. I'm going to take this painting off camera now. We're going to let it dry for a few minutes. Bye-bye.
Alexis,
Yes?
while you're doing that, Kathy asked, she said, as someone who's always on the lookout for a perfect palette, which palette is Alexis using?
The palette that I'm using is called a Miller's Workhorse. I think you all know in California that Cheap Joe's is closing. Some of the saddest news. And this comes from Cheap Joe's, and it's called a Miller's Workhorse. It's a great palette. I love it. This is probably my 4th or 5th one that I've owned. Every few years I replace it and I get a new one. I don't know if they're still available. I know that you can still go to Cheap Joe's and buy some stuff, but go to the website and just search for Miller's Workhorse. And that's what this is. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I want to use this photo now to get me going on an abstract painting. Okay, now I just want to say a few things about the way I approach abstract painting. First of all, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of preliminary instruction today. I'm going to do that in the workshop. I'm going to talk about do's and don'ts and give lots of what I think is really good advice about how to make a good abstract painting. But there isn't time this afternoon. What I will say is that when I make my abstract paintings, I want them to have expressive lines, interesting shapes. I think very carefully and thoughtfully about how I place my colors. And I want to make intriguing textures. Those things. Now, that all has to do with design. But what I will say is that when I paint abstract, I actually paint much more intuitively than I do, the intuition part, in other words, of the total process probably takes more of the process than on realistic paintings, but it still is a combination of intuition and realism. So I start out looking at my photo. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is when I paint my abstracts, I don't make a value study, okay? I have a blank sketchbook, no value study. And honestly, at this moment in time, I have no idea what this painting is going to look like. I let the intuition kind of flow and carry me, and it's quite an interesting adventure. Now, here's the way I like to do it. I start with a photo. Sometimes I'll crop in on a very small section of my photo. Sometimes not. Now, I've already cropped this photo. This is not the entire photograph that I took that day. But sometimes I crop in on even a smaller part where I see perhaps a lot of complexity. I'm not going to crop any farther on this one today, though. But one thing that I do like to do is to turn my photo in different directions. Sorry, my arm was in the way. Okay, so I turn it in different directions as I work because I see interesting new things. Also, if I turn the photo upside down or sideways, it makes it harder for me to really think about trees and rocks and waves, but rather I see those shapes. I see values. I see lines, without getting hung up on the things that are in this place. And so it's really, really helpful. I'm going to leave it upside down now. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So here's a square piece. I decided that I want to make a square painting. And I'm going to start by drawing some lines using my watercolor crayons. Oh, here they are. Okay, so these are made by Caran d'Ache. And so I've got this lovely set with all these different colors. And I pulled out a warm and a cool. I'm actually thinking that I want to make a warm painting. The realistic painting is going to be ultimately cooler to express the coolness of the sky and the water and the trees. So I think it'll be interesting to make an abstract that's warmer. See, I'm starting to think intuitively. Okay, wait a second. I just realized I want to clean my palette. Okay, so I want to make a warmer painting. So what am I going to do? I'm going to start drawing with a cool watercolor crayon. And I'm looking at the upside down photograph now, and I'm looking at the I'm not going to call it by what it actually is. It's a tree, but I'm not going to say it. But I'm looking at these kind of linear shapes in the photo. See them right here? And I'm just going to start drawing right about here. I'm going to make a line. And when I get to about here, here is corresponding to here. I'm going to just follow. I'm going to keep moving on some of the lines which are moving down, moving upwards. I know it's down in the actual photo, and it's going to take me right out the top of the paper. Here's another one of these linear things in the photo right here. Let's not call it by its name, but there's another one right about here, and it's kind of meeting up right here. I'm just looking at these beautiful lines and shapes. Okay, so I've got to start my first couple of lines. Now, right about in here, I'm going to make a little jag here. I'm seeing some other shapes that are kind of doing this. Out this way. I hope you can see this clearly enough. I'm trying to draw pretty dark. And let's take another shape right about here. I want to get something. Now I'm thinking this is a little bit of design thinking, okay? I've got a line coming off this side, this side, this side. Let's get something about over here, right about here. So once again, I'm looking right about here where I'm pointing, right about here. I'm seeing some interesting shapes, and I'm going to come right off the right side of the paper. Okay, guess what I'm going to do now? I'm going to keep going, but I'm going to rotate the painting once again. Rotate the photo once again. And now I can keep drawing in this direction, but usually when I rotate the photo, I rotate the painting to correspond. Let's make a few more shapes. Oh, these shapes are so beautiful. So what I'm doing now is I'm seeing shapes. Some of them these guys right here look very linear. These shapes are boxier. I seem to have lost some of them in my photograph. Well, okay, I'll do without them. Here's an interesting shape. Here. Okay. And now I'm just going to make a line right here that has nothing to do with my photograph. And another one. Here's what's starting to happen now, everybody. I've got enough started on my paper that I am starting to see shapes that I just want to make. And this is, as I said, a rather intuitive process. I'm just starting to feel it. What happens generally is I get to a point like this and I start just moving away from the photo. I don't really need it. And I just start making the shapes on my own. That's what I'm doing here now. So, you know, the photo helps me, as I think I said earlier, it helps me, it sort of kickstarts me. It gets me going. And then I get to a point where I don't need it anymore. Now I am actually seeing a shape right about here. See this shape right here? I don't like that shape. So I'm going to kind of make that shape. There it is. But now that I made that shape, I think I need another one in here. This shape has nothing to do with my photograph. And I think right over here, I need a shape as well. Okay, let's just change the crayon. I don't have to draw the entire thing with just the blue one. I did bring out a brown one as well. I wanted to start with the blue one because most of the paint that I'm going to put on here is going to be warmer. As I said, my intuitive preference was to make a warmer abstract because the realistic painting is cooler. So why not change up the temperature? So I'm starting with the blue for a bit of contrast since I'm going to be painting more with warm paint. The blue watercolor crayon will give me a little bit more contrast, but I can also use a little bit of the warm crayon. Sure, I can. Time to rotate again. Let's turn it again. Oh, now it appears to be right side up. Okay. So now that it's right side up, somehow I lost a lot of the photograph. Well, I'm just going to manage without it. Okay, so now that it's right side up, I run into that trap of, oh gosh, now I can see trees and rocks and plants. And so I'm not going to stay in the right side up dimension very long, but if I see some other interesting shapes, I'm going to put them in. Here's something kind of interesting right here. I've got this line right here and this line beneath it. What if I were to kind of make a connection between the two? So now I've got another connection. When I paint abstract paintings, one thing that, here, I'm going to go take this out a little farther. One thing that I think is very important is to get lines connecting and moving and pulling my viewer through the painting. So making these kind of connections is very helpful. What I did right here, I actually don't like. I just created an arrow that's pointing right out of the painting. Okay, time to use some water. Let's just melt that arrow away. So these watercolor crayons, they're water soluble. So if I make a mark that I don't like, well, I'll just take some water and make it go away. Not a problem. Okay, now how am I doing on time? Oh my gosh, 6:25. Oh gosh. All right, let me get a little bit of color on this thing. And then I want to go back to the realistic one before we run out of too much time here. Before I start to paint, let's just turn this one more time because I don't want to paint with the source photo oriented in the correct way. Don't want to get stuck with that. So I'm just going to keep it sideways. And okay, now if I'm going to make mostly, let's zoom out for you so you can see the whole thing. There it is. Okay. If I'm going to make a mostly warm painting, I'm going to get some warm pigment on my palette. This is some Quin Gold. This is some burnt sienna. Two lovely warm pigments. Let's go for some of that nice permanent magenta that I used before. That's a good start on some warm pigments. And so now what I'm just going to start doing is brushing some paint on. Now notice that I'm painting in some cases around a line. I'm using the line to guide me to make a shape. In other places, like right here, I'm going to drag some of the paint across. Something that I haven't said, in my realistic paintings, and certainly in the abstract paintings, I do not want to feel like I'm painting in a coloring book. So I'm going to deliberately cross edges. So I just crossed another edge from one shape to another. All right, so I'm starting to get some color on. This is an interesting shape that my brush just made. Now, if I was painting this realistically, I might smooth this whole edge out or fill up the rest of the shape, but I rather like it. So I'm just going to drag some of this paint around. I get my fingers into my abstract paintings a whole lot. I like to drag paint around. Sometimes I even put my finger right onto the palette and I get some pigment right from the palette and just apply it that way. Okay, so this is making a very interesting shape here that I think I'm going to leave. Okay, I'm going to take some of this warm pigment now. Oops. And I'm going to kind of take a jump over here. And this is really just, I'm thinking intuitively. I wanted to take a jump. Here we go. Now this shape right here, I use some burnt sienna right here. Let's make sure you can see this. Mixed with some of my permanent magenta. The brush skipped right about here. See that little skip right there? It made a little triangle. Oh, how lovely is that? We're going to leave that little triangle. In fact, let's make the brush skip over here. It's not exactly a triangle, is it? Maybe I'll make a triangle right there. Okay, good. Taking advantage of a little accident. Okay, this is some Quin Gold. And I'm going to take it to the line right there. And now what I'm going to do is I just have water in my brush, just water, no more pigment. And I'm going to drag this pigment out and to the corner. Oops, I want to make sure you can see. While I'm painting for you, I'm constantly looking into my computer monitor, trying to keep a handle on things, not to run off the screen. Let's cross the edge again. Okay, so I hope you can see what's happening now. I'm starting to get some lovely color on this painting. So far, I've only used these warm pigments, but the original blue that I put on some of my lines with is giving me just a little blast or a little touch of coolness here and there, which will ultimately alleviate some of that, what could be overwhelming warmth. Okay, so my thinking there about these colors, that's design thinking, not intuitive thinking. Do you get the difference? I hope you get the difference. Okay, I just want to show you a couple of other things. And then I do want to go back to the realistic painting for a few more minutes. Toothbrush time. I love using my toothbrush on an abstract painting. And so if I spatter with a toothbrush, which is what I'm doing here, now the paint is really, really wet. And remember I said it takes longer to dry. And I don't have the time or the luxury now to wait for it to dry. But I'm going to spatter some of this mixture from the palette of the burnt sienna and the permanent magenta. I want to darken this. And adding the darker pigment, the additional pigment, by spattering is going to give me lots of little teeny drops, which is going to create the illusion of more texture. And one of the things that I always like to accomplish in my abstract paintings is a feeling of some interesting texture. And one of the reasons why I love so much making them on this gessoed surface is because the gessoed surface automatically has more texture to it. I've got the bumps on the paper and then all the crisscrossing strokes. And so I've got an advantage in making more texture. Before I leave this alone, I'm just looking for the right brush. I wanted this brush. I actually want to paint on something cool. Right, here's my cerulean blue. This is my cobalt turquoise. I'm mixing it in with a cerulean blue. And right in this shade, and I'll tell you why I'm doing it right here in just a second. Let's just get some of this lovely blue in right about here. By the way, this has nothing to do with the photograph. In fact, you know what, everybody? I'm just going to take my iPad and put it away. It's done its job. I don't need it anymore. But what I am thinking is, now I've got my design hat on, not my intuitive hat, my design hat on. And I have some interesting lines that I made with the crayon that are kind of coming up and down through this square. And then I've got some that are kind of coming side to side, which is going to get my viewer moving this way and this way. And what that means is that right about in here, where I'm gesturing with my hands, that's where these two directional cues are going to cross. Where they're crossing, I'm thinking design now, that is a good place to have a focal area. I haven't talked about that yet today, have I? A focal area. That's the place in my painting where I want to make it the most interesting, the most intriguing. I want to call my viewer into that area with a realistic painting. And I haven't said this yet, but the realistic painting of Acadia, my focal area is going to be those two skinny tall pine trees. Here, I'm thinking about where these directions are meeting. So let's put a pop of strong, intense, clean blue right here in this focal area. Remember, most of the painting is going to be warm, aside from the lines. Let's get some contrasting blue in this section, and we'll start to turn it into a focal area. So I just wanted to get a bit of that blue on there for you. Everybody, I really wish that we had another hour together today, but we don't. I'd love to keep going on this, but it's just not going to happen. So, but I did want to get some of that cool in for you. And at this point also, I'm just thinking I'm going to make a couple of more lines. I'm feeling like now that I've got this blue here, I want to have a few more lines. I'm using the crayon, you can see. I'm going to make a line with the crayon right through the damp, warm paint. And let's see if I can oh, I can. I'm just going to kind of smoosh it out with my finger a little bit. Here you can see what I just did. A line, and then it's damp enough so that I was able to smudge it out a little bit. And in fact, let's take that finger again. And I'll make a few more finger marks. Let's get a cool mark, a couple of cool marks in the warm side, okay? I hope you're finding this process interesting. I think it's fascinating to work this way. And my plan is over the next week or so to finish this abstract and finish the realistic painting. And I'll send it off to Vicky, your leader, and then maybe she can share it with all of you. And you'll be able to see how I can use one photo and interpret it two very different ways, abstractly and realistically. So let's say goodbye to this for now.
So
Okay, so here,
Alexis, let's see. I got two very positive comments. One from Christine Oliver. Love this demo. The transition from realistic to abstract painting is fascinating and very helpful.
oh,
And
good.
Marika said this is a great approach to achieve abstraction.
Yay. Wonderful. I'm very happy to hear that. Wonderful. Okay, I want to do a couple of more things. I really wanted to stop at about a quarter till or a 10 till. So that you could unmute and actually ask me questions in real time or talk to me. So what I'd like to do is another 5 or 10 minutes or so on this one. So okay, switching gears. So on this one, what I do want to do, remember I was just using that term focal area. Ooh, okay, so the focal area in this painting is really meant to be these two pine trees, and then also moving down into some of these rocks. I'm quite fascinated with some of these rocks. And this is where, back to my value study. See, now I'm using a value study again. Oh my. This is where I've got my darkest darks in the painting. And so I just want to smack in a couple of darks for you. And there's something that I want to mention about darks on gessoed paper. I find not infrequently, if I'm painting particularly large dark areas on gessoed paper, they tend to get a bit more opaque than they would with corresponding techniques and corresponding pigments. They get a bit more opaque on the gessoed paper. That's just natural. And I think it's because, it's just my theory, since the paint is not getting absorbed or, like sucked into the paper, it sits on the surface. And so there's more of a tendency for some opacity to develop. If you are a die-hard transparent watercolor painter, and I got to tell you that I am myself pretty much a die-hard transparent watercolor painter, you might not like this aspect of the gessoed paper. I just kind of go with it. I just don't fuss with it too much. So these dark tree trunks might end up getting a little more opaque. And like I said, I'm just going to go with it. what I just mixed while I was saying all that was some burnt sienna and some mauve and a bit of ultramarine blue. Very little water. Okay, so the mixture here on my palette, you can see it looks pretty dark and thick. You can't really see the white of the palette beneath it. And let's just get these shapes. These are very dark shapes. And let's just get a couple of them. This is nice and dry, by the way. I took just enough time on that abstract painting to get this thing dry enough so you can see. If the paper was still too wet, I'd have a hard time getting these nice, sharp, concise kind of lines, but it's working just fine. Something that I did in my design was I'm including, they're actually behind, oops, why doesn't it want to go? There we go. In this part of the photo where the trees, you can't actually see where they're growing out of the ground, but there are some rocks in the way. And there are some nice dark shadow areas on the rocks. And some of the rocks, like these guys over here, they're just darker rocks. And so let's get, what I want to do is to get some darker pigment on some of the nearby shapes to help to anchor these trees. Look at me with my finger in the paint again, even though I'm painting realistically. I can't keep my fingers out of it. Let's get some of this darker value pigment so that these trees feel more like they're anchored into the earth as opposed to ending too abruptly. All right, and let's drag some of the paint around. Okay, so there are those trees coming out of the ground. All right, that's working okay. I just wanted to show you on the, I'm looking for a nice small pointed brush. This one will do. Okay, I generally don't pick up a small brush until I'm towards the end of a painting, which I am not yet at the end of this painting, but I just want to show you that I'm going to use a small brush. I'm painting calligraphically now. So there are all these lovely branches on these two trees, some of which have foliage, some of them are kind of bare. Some of them might come, let's say, from the right-hand tree. I'm going to draw one now that I didn't draw with pencil. I didn't draw all the branches in. Did I mention that before? I drew a few just to give the idea, but certainly not all of them. So I'm going to draw one with the brush now, coming from the right-hand tree, and we'll bring it over to the left. And in fact, I'm going to hopefully get the feeling that it's tucking behind the left-hand tree. So we're just going to continue it. If you're going to make a painting like this, you don't have to draw every branch in with pencil ahead of time. And I generally don't. I draw enough in to give the idea of what's going to be happening, but then I like to draw them with my brush. Sometimes I'll draw additional ones with a pencil, and as long as the surface of the painting is dry, you can draw additionally anytime you want. Not a problem. It's not a problem. Now, I do want to show you one thing, and I hope it's going to work. And I'm looking for just the right, oh, here. I'm going to use this little guy. All right, so this is one of those Princeton Select Chisel blenders. And I'm going to what I want to do is lighten where this tree goes in front of, where it goes in front of this chunk of land behind it. I want to lighten it up. So I just use the Select Chisel Blender to lift off some of the paint right there for the trunk. And let's make a lighter branch. And honestly, I'll tell you something. To make this really read, I probably should darken the background hillside a little bit more. So I'll have a little more value contrast. But look, I'm just going to pull some of that paint right off. Are we close enough? Let's come in one more notch. There we go.
We have about 15 more minutes.
Okay. So you see the way I'm just pulling off a branch there? So now I can have a lighter branch here, lighter than what's behind it, as opposed to these guys here that are clearly darker than what's behind it. I'm actually seeing something here. This is my design hat on now. This branch right here that I made looks like a continuation of the one that's on the right side. I don't like that. Okay, let's fix that. So I'm just going to take it out. Look how easy it is to correct something on gessoed paper. Let's take the whole thing out. All right, just a little tiny touch of this little brush. And now I can come back in and let's put this branch in a little bit lower here. So now it doesn't look like a continuation. It looks like a completely new branch. Okay, my friends, I think I'm going to have to stop, but I want to do one more thing. I just want to get in one or two shadows on the rocks. I need to get in a couple of them. Excuse my voice. I put them in my value study in a few places, but there's definitely a dark middle value. The sunlight, I haven't talked about that, have I? The sunlight is coming from our right. It's coming from above and from our right. So the top surfaces of these rocks are lighter, and then the left sides are darker. So the top sides, the right sides are lighter because they're facing towards the light. But the left sides and anything lower down, facing downward, is going to be darker because it's facing away from the light. It's shadow. So I just want to get in a couple of these just to start getting a feeling of the architecture of these stones. When I paint big chunky rocks like that, did you hear me use the word architecture? I actually think of them almost as architectural elements, as if I was painting, something kind of like a building that is boxy. And so getting a few of these shadows in, and I'm just doing this so fast now. It just starts to create more form, more volume, more solidity. I want these rocks to look big and strong. You know, they're like big, giant chunks of granite that have been on this shoreline for, millennia. And so I need to get those shadows in. And I think now I really do need to stop. It's 10 till 7 here in North Carolina. Let's take a quick look at the two paintings. I think it'll be really interesting. Close my palette. Let's just take a look at the two paintings side by side. Oops, move this one over. Two completely unfinished paintings. in the workshop, since we'll have 3 days, I'm hoping that I'll get a lot farther along on both paintings. But, oh, I tell you what, I'm going to turn this one this way. Let's do that for now. You see these 2 lines right here? Here they are here. Okay. You see these lines right here? Here they are here. Do you see, can you see the continuation now? The flow from one to the other. See this shape right here? Here it is here. But look how different it is. And the chances are, when and if this painting gets finished, I'm going to end up maybe orienting it in this direction before I consider it done. And I put my signature on it somewhere in the lower part, which seals the deal and tells my viewer which way is up. But I think that this is really interesting to look at them side by side, oriented in a similar way, 2 very different expressions started from one photograph. Wait, I tell you what, let's do the whole thing. I'll take a picture of this, by the way. I'm going to take a picture of this. And Vicki, when I send you all the stuff, I'm going to include this. So we'll
Okay,
get the
great.
source photo and the 2 interpretations. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. Ooh. Okay. So I do want to say that with my classes and my workshops, what I always do is day by day by day, I take sequential pictures of what I'm doing. And day by day by day, I send you, well, whoever is in the class or the workshop, I send them an email each day building upon it. So Vicki, what I'm going to send you is kind of like that. And if
Okay.
you want to share it with all these nice people who are here with us this afternoon, feel free to,
Okay, great.
and I will include, I think it's kind of a cool idea to take the picture of the iPad picture and then the 2 paintings on either side. And I gotta say, everybody, this is the first time I've done this on camera like this. You're there. You were here. So I'm just like so excited right now.
Yeah,
Would
it
you
was,
all like to unmute yourself and ask me any additional questions? Vicki, I see a lot of chat messages. I see 11 chat messages now. Is there anything that you want to relay to me, Vicki, or anybody who wants to speak?
Danelle just wrote, brava, so well done in every way. And Deborah
Yes,
said, thank you for a wonderful demo. I love the 2 paintings.
good, wonderful.
Kathy says, thanks for showing how you move from realism to abstraction. It has given me a path forward.
Yay, wonderful.
And Brenda says, you should be excited. This was a fantastic idea. And so one more time, encouraging anyone that wants to take the workshop, sign up, today or tomorrow, so we can make sure that we move forward with it and avoid canceling. It should be a fascinating workshop.
That would be lovely for me. We'll just wait and see. I think I had
Oh, and Mariana just asked, will the class be recorded if we can't attend every day? And the
yeah.
answer to that is yes. And you will have access to it for a minimum of 60 days.
60 days. Yay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I say 60. I think the last one we actually gave 90 days. So that's why we usually do 60 days.
Okay, super. Okay. Here's my website address if anybody wants to go visit it. Here's my email address if you want to send me an email, feel free. I just wanted you to know how to get in touch with me if you want to. My last name, Lavine, is spelled in an unusual way. Most Lavines spell it L-E. If you look up for Alexis, Levine, you won't find me. So I just want to make sure you know how to spell my name. But I'd love to hear from you, and you will all hear from me, of course, through Vicky sometime during the next week. And if the workshop is a go, anybody who's in the workshop, I'm going to start blasting out email information on Wednesday morning with all kinds of information to get you going for the workshop. So just so you know, I'll be in your inbox a lot.
Well,
Um,
Alexis, thank you so much. This was a great demo.
you're welcome.
Yeah, you shared a lot of great information with us.
You are so very welcome. It's my great pleasure. I love to do this. I'm just so jazzed right now, so excited. Um, Vicky, whether the workshop is a go or not, I just want to thank you again for your help and putting your faith in me and your help tonight. No, it's not tonight there. It's still very much afternoon where you are. But, your help this afternoon, and happy painting, everybody.
Well, thank you,
Go get
Alexis.
some gesso.
Okay. Have a good evening. Thanks, everybody, for
Okay.
coming.
Okay. Bye, everybody.